A black waitress in a five-star restaurant noticed something strange about the homeless-looking man at table 14. He was watching everything, every movement, every detail. And when he ordered a $400 steak without even glancing at the price, she knew. This man wasn't poor, he was pretending. What she did next would expose a massive fraud, save over 1,000 jobs, and prove that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is slip a stranger a piece of paper. But here's the twist: she had no idea who he really was. She just knew he was her only chance. This is the true story of what happens when a billionaire goes undercover and meets the one person brave enough to tell him the truth. Welcome to Real Black Voices. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. You know, the richest people in the world often feel the most disconnected from reality. And that's exactly what was happening to Michael Randy. Michael was worth $12 billion. Let that sink in. $12 billion. He owned Golden Harvest, one of the largest restaurant chains in America, 847 locations, over 15,000 employees. Numbers that looked beautiful on paper. But lately, something was wrong. Customer complaints were rising, reviews were dropping. His board of directors was pressuring him to cut costs, slash budgets, lay off workers. The bottom line is suffering, they said. We need to trim the fat. Michael had already approved the plan. Next month, they would fire 1,200 employees, mostly servers, mostly cleaners, mostly the people who earned the least and worked the hardest. It was just business, right? That's what everyone told him. But Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something. His managers sent him perfect reports, perfect numbers, perfect explanations. Everything was always perfect. And Michael had learned long ago that when everything looks perfect, someone is usually lying. So he did what he always did when he needed the truth. He disappeared. He took off his $10,000 watch. He removed his Italian leather shoes. He put on clothes from a thrift store, a faded jacket with a torn sleeve, pants that were too big, shoes that had holes in the soles. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a billionaire anymore. He saw nobody. And that was exactly the point. Tonight, Michael was going to his flagship restaurant in Chicago. The Crown Jewel, they called it. The most profitable location in the entire chain. His managers said it was running perfectly. Michael wanted to see for himself. The moment he pushed through the glass doors, he felt the shift. The hostess, a young woman with perfect makeup and a practiced smile, took one look at him, and her expression changed. Not obviously, just enough. Her smile got thinner. Her eyes got colder. "Can I help you?" she asked. But her tone said something else entirely. "Table for one." "Please," Michael said quietly, making his voice sound tired, defeated. The hostess looked him up and down. She glanced at the dining room full of well-dressed customers, then back at him. "We're quite full tonight, but I suppose I can find you something." She led him to a tiny table in the back corner, right next to the kitchen doors. The worst seat in the house. The table they gave to people they wanted to hide. Michael had seen this before. It never stopped hurting. As he sat down, he noticed something interesting. A young black woman was watching him from across the room. She wasn't staring rudely. She was observing, carefully, thoughtfully, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Her name tag said, Ellie. She had kind eyes and tired shoulders, the kind of tired that comes from working too many shifts and sleeping too few hours. But there was something sharp in her gaze, something intelligent. Let me tell you about Ellie Williams, because understanding her is understanding this whole story. Ellie was 26 years old. She'd been working at the Crown Jewel for 3 years. She was good at her job, really good. The kind of server who remembered your name, your favorite drink, your wife's birthday. The kind of person who made customers feel special without even trying. But Ellie was also struggling. She was putting her younger sister through college. She was helping her mother pay medical bills. Every dollar mattered. Every tip counted. This job wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline. That afternoon, before her shift started, Ellie had overheard something that made her stomach turn. She'd been in the break room, and she heard Mr. Patterson, the general manager, talking to his assistant through the thin walls. Corporate sending some kind of secret shopper tonight, Patterson had said. Some quality inspector. Everyone needs to be on their best behavior. Anyone who screws up loses their quarterly bonus. Ellie had filed that information away. Secret inspector. Tonight. Got it. But then, just an hour later, she'd heard something much worse. She'd gone to the storage room to get napkins, and she'd heard voices coming from the walk-in freezer. Patterson, again, this time with the head chef and the supply manager. Ellie had frozen, hidden behind a shelf, and listened. The new supplier is confirmed, Patterson was saying. We switch everything over next week. The meat, the produce, everything. But the quality, the chef started. The quality is fine. It passes basic inspection, and we save 40% on costs. That's money in our pockets. What about the records? We change the labels, alter the inventory logs. Nobody will know. Corporate just sees the numbers, and the numbers will look great. Ellie's heart had pounded so hard she thought they might hear it. They were talking about fraud, about serving customers substandard food, about lying to the company that employed them. And here's what made it worse. Ellie knew about the layoffs coming. Everyone did. Rumors had been spreading for weeks. 1,200 people about to lose their jobs. People like her. People with families and bills and dreams. If Patterson's scheme worked, he'd look like a hero. Costs down, profits up. He'd probably get promoted. And who would get fired instead? The servers, the cleaners, the honest people who actually did their jobs. Ellie felt sick. She felt trapped. She felt helpless, until she saw the man at table 14. There was something about him that didn't add up. Yes, he was dressed like a homeless person. Yes, the hostess had treated him like garbage. But Ellie noticed things other people missed. The way he sat, not hunched over like someone beaten down by life, but straight, alert, watching. The way his eyes moved around the room, taking in every detail. The kitchen door, the manager's office, the way the servers moved. And then he ordered. Ellie was assigned to his table. When she approached him, she expected him to order the cheapest thing on the menu, maybe just water and bread. Instead, he looked up at her calmly and said, "I'll have the Wagyu ribeye, medium rare, and a glass of the 2018 Opus 1. Ellie's pen stopped moving. The Wagyu ribeye was $400. The wine was $200 a glass. This homeless man had just ordered a $600 meal without blinking. "Excellent choice, sir," Ellie said, keeping her voice professional. But her mind was racing. Poor people don't order $600 meals. Crazy people don't order so calmly. Rich people pretending to be poor? They might. And then Ellie remembered. The secret inspector. Tonight. What if this was him? What if this shabby-looking man was actually from corporate, here to test the restaurant? It made sense. The calm confidence. The expensive order. The way he was watching everything. And, if he was from corporate, if he had real power, then maybe, just maybe, he could do something about what Patterson was planning. Ellie made a decision. A crazy, dangerous, possibly career-ending decision. She grabbed a napkin and a pen. Her hands were shaking as she wrote, "If you're really here to inspect, check the walk-in freezer. We're being forced to use substandard ingredients. They're changing the supplier next week. Please help us." She folded the napkin into a tiny square and slipped it into her apron pocket. It felt like it was burning against her leg. When she brought his steak to the table, her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. This was insane. If she was wrong about him, if he showed this note to Patterson, she would be fired immediately, blacklisted, destroyed. But if she was right, Ellie set down the plate with practiced grace. "Your Wagyu ribeye, sir? Is there anything else I can get you?" "No, thank you," the man said. "This looks wonderful." As she turned to leave, she let her hand brush against the edge of the table. The folded napkin slipped from her fingers and landed silently next to his plate. Then she walked away without looking back. Her legs felt like jelly. Her vision was blurring. What had she just done? Behind her, Michael Randy stared at the tiny square of paper that had appeared beside his steak. He glanced around the restaurant. No one was watching. Slowly, casually, he unfolded it. "And read the words that would change everything." Michael read the note 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "Check the walk-in freezer. Substandard ingredients. Please help us." This wasn't a complaint about rude service. This wasn't someone asking for money. This was a warning, a cry for help, and it was specific enough to be real. Michael ate his steak slowly, thinking. The meat was excellent. But was it really Wagyu? He'd eaten enough expensive beef in his life to know the real thing. This was close, but something was slightly off. The marbling wasn't quite right. The texture was a fraction too tough. Was he imagining it? Or had he been served a lie? He paid his bill in cash and left without drawing attention, but he didn't go home. Instead, he walked around the block and waited in the shadows across the street. At 11:30 p.m., the last customers left. The lights in the dining room went dark, but Michael waited. At midnight, the kitchen staff came out the back door, laughing and tired. Michael watched them leave, one by one. At 12:45, the managers finally emerged. Patterson, the general manager, was the last one out. He locked the door, got into an expensive BMW, and drove away. Michael waited another 15 minutes. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Robert, I need you." Robert Shaw had worked for Michael for 20 years. He was head of security, former FBI, and the only person Michael trusted completely. "It's 1 a.m., Michael. What's wrong?" "I need to get into my own restaurant. Quietly. Can you disable the alarm remotely?" There was a pause. Then Robert said, "Give me 10 minutes. 11 minutes later, Michael was standing inside the Crown Jewels kitchen, using his phone's flashlight to navigate through the darkness. He found the walk-in freezer at the back. The heavy door opened with a rush of cold air. What he saw inside made his blood run cold. The shelves were full of meat, vegetables, seafood, everything labeled perfectly with Golden Harvest stickers, premium quality, top grade. But Michael knew what to look for now. He pulled out a package of beef and examined it closely. The Golden Harvest label was on top, but underneath, barely visible, was another label, a different supplier, a company he'd never heard of. He checked another package. Same thing, and another, and another. Someone had been removing the original labels and covering them with fake Golden Harvest stickers. Michael felt sick. He pulled out his phone and started taking photos. Package after package, label after label. He found invoices tucked into a folder on the shelf, invoices from the original supplier, showing prices 60% lower than what Golden Harvest was supposedly paying. The math was simple and devastating. Patterson and his team were buying cheap, low-quality ingredients, serving them to customers as premium products, and pocketing the difference. They'd probably been doing it for months, maybe years. How much money had they stolen? Hundreds of thousands? Millions? And here was the worst part. Michael had been about to fire 1,200 innocent workers, while these criminals kept their jobs and their bonuses. He stood in that freezer, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, and something shifted inside him. The layoffs, the cost-cutting, the trim-the-fat mentality. He'd been so focused on numbers that he'd forgotten about people. He'd been about to destroy the lives of honest workers like Ellie while rewarding the people who were actually hurting his company. What kind of leader had he become? At 8 a.m. the next morning, Ellie Williams walked into the Crown Jewel for her shift. She hadn't slept. All night, she'd been wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. What if the homeless man wasn't an inspector? What if he'd shown the note to Patterson? What if security was waiting to escort her out? The restaurant looked normal. The morning prep crew was setting up. The hostess was polishing menus. Everything seemed fine. But then Ellie noticed something strange. There were people she didn't recognize standing near the manager's office. Men and women in expensive suits. They weren't customers. They looked like lawyers. Or executives. "What's going on?" Ellie whispered to another server. "I don't know. Something big. Patterson's been in his office since 6 a.m. He looks terrified." Ellie's heart started racing. And then the front doors opened, and a man walked in. He was wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit, His hair was styled. His shoes probably cost more than Ellie's monthly rent. He moved with absolute confidence, like he owned the place. Because he did. Ellie recognized him from the company website, from news articles, from magazine covers. Michael Randy, the billionaire, the owner of Golden Harvest. And when he turned and looked across the restaurant, his eyes met Ellie's. It was him, the homeless man, the man from table 14. Ellie couldn't breathe. Michael walked toward her, and the entire restaurant went silent. Every employee stopped what they were doing. Every eye was on them. "Ellie Williams?" Michael said, his voice calm but carrying through the room. "Yes, sir," Ellie managed to say. "I believe you gave me something last night. A note." The world stopped spinning. Ellie felt like she might faint. This was it. She was about to be fired in front of everyone, made an example of, destroyed. But then Michael did something unexpected. He smiled. "That note," he said, "was the bravest thing anyone has done for this company in years." He turned to address the entire room. "My name is Michael Randy. I own Golden Harvest. Last night, I came here in disguise to see how this restaurant really operates. And what I found," he paused, his expression hardening, "was a betrayal." Two of the suited people walked to Patterson's office and opened the door. Patterson emerged, looking like a man facing his execution. "Mr. Patterson," Michael said coldly, "I found the freezer. I found the fake labels. I found the invoices. I know exactly how much you and your team have stolen." Patterson's face went white. "Mr. Randy, I can explain. You can explain to the police. You're fired, effective immediately, and you'll be hearing from our lawyers." Security escorted Patterson out, his assistant, the supply manager, the head chef. One by one, the corrupt managers were removed from the building. The remaining employees stood in shocked silence. Michael turned back to Ellie. "You took a tremendous risk last night. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know if I could help, but you tried anyway because you wanted to protect your coworkers." Ellie's eyes were filling with tears. I couldn't let them get away with it. I couldn't watch good people lose their jobs while they—" "I know," Michael said gently. "And that's exactly why I'm here." He addressed the room again. "I came to this company last night, planning to approve layoffs. 1,200 jobs. I thought it was necessary to save money." He paused. "I was wrong. The problem wasn't the employees. The problem was corruption at the top. Instead of cutting jobs, I'm going to invest in the people who actually make this company work." He announced a new plan. No layoffs, new quality control systems, whistleblower protections, training programs, paths to promotion for frontline workers. And then he looked at Ellie. "Miss Williams, I'd like to offer you a new position. Director of Quality Assurance for Golden Harvest. You'll travel to our restaurants, identify problems, and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. The salary is $150,000 per year, plus benefits and stock options." Ellie's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the nearest chair, tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Michael knelt down, so he was at her eye level. "Because last night, when everyone else in this restaurant saw a homeless man not worth their time, you saw a human being worth helping. Because when you had information that could cost you everything, you chose truth over safety. Because you cared about your coworkers more than you cared about yourself." He stood up. "The world needs more people like you, Ellie. Not serving tables, leading. You know, we often think that changing the world requires big actions, grand gestures, powerful positions. But that's not always true. Sometimes, changing the world is as simple as slipping a note to a stranger." Ellie didn't know she was talking to a billionaire. She just knew something was wrong, and she couldn't stay silent. She was scared. She was risking everything, but she did it anyway. And because of that one small act of courage, over 1,000 people kept their jobs. A massive fraud was exposed. And a billionaire remembered why he started his company in the first place. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about the people. The servers working double shifts to put their sisters through college. The cleaners sending money home to their families. The line cooks dreaming of opening their own restaurants someday. Real people, with real lives, worth protecting. Today, Ellie runs the most respected quality assurance program in the restaurant industry. She's helped thousands of employees report problems without fear. She's caught dozens of corrupt managers, and she's never forgotten where she came from. Michael still does his undercover visits sometimes. But now, he's looking for something different. Not fraud, not problems. He's looking for the next Ellie, the next person brave enough to speak up, the next quiet hero waiting to be discovered. Because that's the thing about courage. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it comes as a whisper, a folded napkin, a trembling hand. And sometimes that whisper changes everything. The end.